This is one of 4 webinars which are organised by Digital Catapult in partnership with DCMS, which is the UK government's Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport. I'm Linda Ligio, Senior Innovation Partner at Digital Catapult, and for those who don't know us, we are the UK's leading innovation centre accelerating the adoption of advanced digital technologies, including future networks. And I'm really excited to introduce this series because we have really pulled together an amazing amount of expertise to help you discover some of the most promising 5G-enabled technologies that are helping to transform the manufacturing and logistics sectors. And really, 5G as a key enabler of new technologies is helping us to discover the new potential of technologies such as robotics, AI, and blockchain, to really see what are the benefits for the industry, and it's helping us to discover how we can optimize processes, reduce carbon emissions, and overall improve productivity. Today we are going to shine the spotlight on innovators, but we have another webinar actually on the 16th of November, which will focus on manufacturing logistics companies that are experimenting with 5G. And we are already taking registrations for this webinar, so do click on the link that you will see in the chat and make sure you secure your place today. Today we have a quite packed agenda. Let's have a look. First of all, I will provide you a little bit of context to introduce the program behind this event. Shortly after, we will hear from our DCMS sponsor before we run through presentation on cutting-edge innovations. Around 11:20, we will have a little break before we move on to a panel discussion on how industry can work with innovators to accelerate 5G adoption. To conclude, we will share some news on funding opportunities with Horizon Europe. So to give you a little bit of context, this event is organized as part of the Industrial 5G Testbeds and Trials program, which is part of DCMS portfolio and aims to really demonstrate what is the value of 5G beyond enhanced mobile broadband by targeting innovative use cases in manufacturing and logistics. This program is looking at new ways that 5G can enhance and enable scale deployment of our industrial digital technologies that I mentioned earlier, AI, Internet of Things, but also is not only considering this technology in their own right, but also in combination into complex cyber-physical systems, such as, for example, digital twins. Digital Catapult has been coordinating for the past year and a half the Industrial 5G Testbeds and Trials program on behalf of DCMS, and really bringing together the learnings from 8 industry-focused R&D projects. We're doing this to support a stronger business case for industrial 5G adoption, and really we want to showcase with those events the real-world example of how 5G can unlock innovation in manufacturing logistics. As part of this program, we will also develop and disseminate practical resources, including a toolkit and a final report, which will be published early next year. And really, we're doing this to help industry navigate the new opportunities for digital transformation. And now, to talk more about how this journey can be accelerated even further, I'm delighted to welcome today Mohammed Lari, who is the Head of Cross-Government and International Coordination at DCMS. DCMS has been a very strong partner with us in this program, and they're working even further to invest in the industries that can stimulate both the recovery and the growth of the UK economy. Mohammed, please join me in our virtual stage.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, please.
Good morning. Okay.
Camera on.
I can see myself, so I'm hoping.
Hello, Mohammed. Yes, it's a pleasure to have you today. So I'm going to leave you the floor to tell us more about your plans.
Awesome. Thank you, Linda, for both organizing this event, this webinar, with the range of colleagues that you've utilized to deploy this, and then, of course, for the invitation. I suspect many of our participants on the call are quite familiar with the UK's 5G Testbeds and Trials program. But in short, I'm Mohammed Lari, and I work within the international and cross-government sphere of the program. And essentially what we are looking to do, and have been doing since the back end of 2016, early 2017, is establish research and development in the domain of wireless networks, wireline, and of course, SATCOMs, to enable and address real-world challenges that our communities and businesses are facing. And those challenges are addressed through the very many different technologies and services that academic researchers, spin-outs of universities, some of the startups and SMEs, and some of the larger players have been able to demonstrate and trial some of their new technologies and services that make use of those high-speed networks. So our program in itself is to help accelerate the progress of the deployment of 5G, but also to support that progress through applications and services, and that's inclusive of the very many different sort of technologies that utilize those networks. Now we have about 30 test beds that are inclusive of over 300 partnerships that we've been able to nurture. And that's inclusive of businesses, academic researchers, like I've mentioned, and businesses of all sizes, I should say, that are working towards the various modes of connectivity. We've got projects that look at the applications of LoRaWAN and BIoT, all the way up to sort of the cutting edge Release 16 5G new radio hardware that's just coming online into the market. We've got applications of SATCOMs and wider space technologies being applied, and a myriad of other software and connectivity solutions that allow us to look at how does connectivity enable the growth of businesses, the transformation of businesses, and how does it accelerate the pace of doing so through a lens of challenging current political and environmental challenges, which are necessarily embedded into our society. And what we're seeing from a program perspective is the growing impact that accelerated digital transformation can provide to provide a step change in everything from how we interact with our healthcare professionals, as a Q&A question has come up, all the way down to how we weld joints on metallic battery cells for the next generation of electric vehicles. So really tackling some of the global challenges around net zero there. So, and then of course the specific challenge of welding. Within the manufacturing, construction, and logistics domain, we've got about 8 projects that have not only had to keep up with the global pandemic, but also respond to the challenges of their global supply chains, and looking at the utilization of IoT-enabled devices all the way to sensors, whether they're RFID or otherwise, looking at the applications and usage of aerial and ground-based drones, and quite simply making use, or better use, I should say, of their data assets through machine learning or AI. And we're joined today by some of those very same partners who have had to work through these challenges to come up with solutions that have commercial legs. At the end of the day, some of these businesses are still in their early stages of growth, while others on the other spectrum are looking to embed their trialed and tested solutions in their global supply chains. And we'll hear from those speakers about what the challenges, what the hurdles have been, and what some of those solutions look like. The diverse landscape and the ecosystem of our project partners have also triggered a public policy response within the Department for Digital Culture, Media, Sport. And that's where we're looking at the practical applications of neutral host models, quantifying the impact of new private 5G network operators and how that drives systems integration, the skill sets that's required, and particularly where in the manufacturing sector, particularly where machines have long life cycles, what does that enable in terms of interjecting with new connectivity solutions or a myriad of other software platforms? And it's not as simple as connecting 2 Lego pieces together. That systems integration component, that skills component, and of course, the necessary tools that are needed to allow for that is quite crucial. Hence, what we do as a program is try to de-risk the research and development activities of some of our corporate partners and bring together our researchers, our early stage academic researchers, as well as our startups and SMEs who've got solutions and technologies to address that challenge. But these challenges are masked with new opportunities, how we slice and share networks, how we make the most use of spectrum, most efficient use of spectrum, how we enable more modular components to build secure, resilient networks, and how those new solutions address the challenges, whether it's keeping up with our road maintenance systems all the way to ensuring seamless movements of goods and people, and ensuring safety of our staff, of course, in the very most remote parts of the country, all the way down to the logistics hubs that allow for supply chains to progress. What I'm most excited about today, and really what I'm looking forward to, is hearing about the process of digital transformation, how we've been able to gain traction internally within the very many businesses that work with us, and of course throughout our projects, and of course how we've been able to do that without impacting the factory floors, and driving towards efficiencies of those businesses and of those technologies. And lastly, this is with the view and working with UK 5G and working with Digital Catapult and working with our project partners that are going to be speaking later today, to allow our manufacturers, our construction workers and logistics operators to respond to those challenges that they have directly in their organizations, with the view to having global reach. So working with partnerships or working with research and development in partnership with our European counterparts through programs like Horizon Europe, and providing an avenue for further government grant funding as well as private sector investment to enable these technologies and solutions to have a longer commercial lifestyle than the Testbeds and Trials tends to operate under. And on behalf of the program, I'd like to just both welcome and say thank you for both this opportunity, but also for sparking this conversation. We have our sights firmly locked into supporting UK-based businesses and researchers, and that's through the very many channels that are available to us. And of course, some of those will come to fruition later this afternoon. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thank you very much, Linda.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. It's definitely a very exciting time, and we know that some of those projects are still in development phase, experimenting, and we will hear more about some of those in the November webinar. So do book your slot so that we can share more information with you later on. Along those speakers today, there are two startups who have joined the construction cohort of Spring, which is a 3-month accelerator program, which is helping companies to experiment with specific 5G use cases and developing prototypes or proof of concept. I would like to remind you that if you do have any questions for our speakers, please feel free to post them in the chat, and the speakers will try to respond the best they can. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Peter Milden, who is the Chief Operation Officer and co-founder of VIVACITY Labs. Speaker is going to tell us more about how AI controls smart junctions can optimize the road networks. Peter, please join us and feel free to put your video on. Here you are. Lovely to have you. You can also start sharing your screen. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Good morning, everybody. I'm Peter Milden, Chief Operating Officer and one of the co-founders of a company called VIVACITY Labs. And I'm here to talk to you today about our Smart Junctions 5G project. Smart Junctions 5G, at its core, is a project that is using reinforcement learning to optimize urban traffic control, as that's using the traffic signals as our tool fundamentally to try and create a benefit of traffic flow, but also adding 5G into the mix. So we've got a nice mix here of AI, 5G and the real world. Alongside the reinforcement learning components, two sort of key things that we are exploring on the project. The first one is around whether we can develop an innovative business model that uses this use case to leverage long-term capital funding to help support the rollout of small cells along main urban transport corridors. And then we're also doing a detailed assessment of how 5G really does help with the traffic signal control use case. And I've got some results coming on that later in my presentation as well. VIVACITY Labs are a SME. We've just hired our 100th employee actually this month, so we're growing very fast. We specialize in using machine learning in the transport infrastructure space. We were founded in late 2015, so we're coming up to our 6th birthday. We have partnered with Transport for Greater Manchester on this project, who are providing an existing test bed for traffic signal control. So we've been working with them on the smart junction side of things since 2018. And we've also brought a company called Weaver Labs into the mix for the Smart Junctions 5G side of things. So Weaver Labs were founded out of some of the early research that King's College were doing in 5G networks back in 2018. And they are building a system that will effectively enable components within private 5G networks to be brought together in a much more plug and play way, and really help get lots of different use cases onto 5G networks. Most of my presentation is focused on the use case side of things. If anyone does have questions on the private 5G network, I'll do my best to answer them. I must say I'm not an expert in that particular area. So as I've sort of already alluded to, Smart Junctions is actually a project that's been going on longer. We started in 2018. It's an Innovate UK funded project, fundamentally focused on using the artificial intelligence to improve traffic flows. And then the innovatively named Smart Junctions 5G started about 18 months ago. And the key focus here was to integrate a private 5G network with small cells actually into the traffic signal control and look at how that impacted the business case of the system as a whole. In terms of how the solution actually works, it all starts with VIVACITY's sensor. So this is a video-based edge processing sensor that will detect and anonymously track different road users through the field of view. So if it sees a pedestrian, it'll say a pedestrian is walking along the street here, a cyclist is cycling along the street on this path, and you have a queue of 3 cars, 2 vans and a bus. That's the sort of information that we get out of the sensors, and that is provided in real time into the system. In order to train any AI system though, we don't want to let it loose in the real world before it's learned how to perform. So the next key component is having a really good simulation of that world. So think digital twin-esque system here, where we're able to model each of the individual road users, the pedestrians, the cyclists, and the cars, as well as the traffic signals within that space, and let the AI loose in a slightly chaotic fashion in the simulated world so it can learn from its mistakes, improve, and get to a point where it is controlling the traffic well. And that will all happen in those detailed micro simulations. At the point that the AI starts outperforming any existing algorithm in the simulated world, we can then push it to a piece of control hardware that will sit at the edge in the junction. And we've actually built a GPU-powered outstation that will sit in traffic signal controls to enable that piece. And then finally, we've been building a user interface that will then help the authorities really understand what is going on at that junction, not just from a case of what the AI is doing, but also so they can have a look at the queues that might be forming at a particular junction and understand better what is going on. For this particular test bed, we've been looking at an area around Salford. There's a run of 6 or 7 junctions and 3 pedestrian crossings in this particular area, right next to Salford University. We've got Media City just down the road, and we're deploying about 6 5G small cells across that region to provide continuous coverage through the area. Now, our main use case for this is to make sure that the sensors can talk to the junctions, but obviously once you've got this level of coverage, you start opening up use cases around connected vehicles along that corridor as well as potentially providing connectivity to the businesses, schools and libraries that run within that area. So just to recap quickly, main focus here is providing connectivity for smart junctions, but it will also provide the connected corridor for connected vehicles, potentially also providing connectivity for other public sector use cases, and beyond that, the opportunities maybe to rent that capacity to other private sector use cases as well. So why 5G is often the question that we get asked here. And so it's worth thinking, what benefits does 5G offer over 4G? And the key ones that come up are typically bandwidth, but actually for our use case, bandwidth is at the bottom of the list. For smart junctions, we're really looking at having a low latency connection and then a really reliable connection as well. If you look in the 4G world, we'll quite often see we've got high-ish latencies, but then in some scenarios, particularly when the traffic gets bad, those latencies will go catastrophically bad. So in order to understand the impact of latency on the system, it's worth just revisiting the data flow that is happening in this particular scenario. So we start off with the sensor detecting a vehicle at the road edge, and our software on the device at the edge typically does that in about 50 milliseconds. That data would then get sent to the cloud for processing. And on 4G, we'd normally see somewhere between a 250 millisecond delay up to about 1.5 seconds for that data to be sent through. Although it's worth noting that at times we've seen that get to 8-10 seconds, and sometimes you lose the network connection altogether as well. For the sake of argument, let's just say that that's 500 milliseconds, because dealing with a range is slightly hard when we're looking at the maths. Then the agent is making a decision on what to do. So this is the AI deciding based on what has been seen on the sensor, should the traffic light be green or red? That decision takes another 50 milliseconds or so. That decision needs to be sent back again before the traffic lights change. So when we add all of that up, the majority of the delays are coming in the connectivity side of things. If we were to switch the connectivity through to a 5G world, where we're already starting to see quite comfortably latencies around 25 milliseconds, I know a lot of the factory-based systems are looking to get that number down even further, but say for us, 25 milliseconds would be absolutely fine. You can see quite a large saving in the round trip, and knocking almost a second, in fact, off the decision-making time. So the next question on that is, so what? What is the impact of having got rid of that latency? Well, in order for us to investigate that, we needed to go into the simulated world initially. So we built our simulation of that run of junctions. Let me just click play here to show you what it looks like. It's not the sexiest simulation in the world. Each vehicle is modeled as one of these little blue arrows. If we've got an HGV, they come in as a larger blue arrow, which you might be able to see in the bottom left over there. Every traffic light gets modeled so we can see whether they are green or red. And we've also built all of the sensor detector zones in here. Now, the benefit of that is we can now start to model in some of those latencies and run experiments on what happens if we have different latencies, and indeed even variable latencies, and start to see the output of that. So on the plot here, we've got the output of the experiments, and we can see for variable latency on the connectivity side, the impact that that has in the time lost, i.e. the time spent waiting by the average vehicle sat at a red traffic light. And fundamentally, in reducing latency from about that 1.2 milliseconds down to 200 milliseconds for the entire round trip journey, we're seeing about a 3% saving, so about a 1.3 second saving per vehicle driving through that junction. Now, that might not sound very much. When you take into account that you have about 40,000 vehicles a day crossing that junction, 365 days a year, it really does start to add up. And you're looking at around about a 50K productivity saving just from that 1.3 seconds of time saved as a vehicle crosses the junction. So not revolutionary, but certainly measurable. In terms of where we're at in the real world, then, we have installed our sensors across this junction network. We're still in the process of installing the actual 5G network that's going to go alongside that. The sensors now all have an external 5G router. We're in the process of building an internal 5G modem into the sensors, but that's process in terms of getting our hands on the right components to make it happen. It got delayed slightly by some of the silicon crisis that you will have all heard about in the news. So we opted for the external approach for this particular project. We're trialing two different modems, one provided by Thales and one provided by Quictel. We've built variants for that that can be powered with DC power and AC power as well. So we've got about 40 of these devices installed across the test bed, and we're currently able to test them on the Vodafone 5G network that is available in the area. And we're seeing very high bandwidths, which I said earlier, we don't necessarily need, but crucially, the latencies that we're seeing are between 12 and 25 milliseconds on that particular network already. So well within the parameters of what we need to make the system work. And then also crucially, we started to experiment what the benefit of the AI signal control is. And the key thing to say here is compared to Scoop, which is the existing algorithm that is state of the art, when you do an interlaced control one day with Scoop, one day with our system, currently I know on 4G rather than 5G, we're seeing about a 23% reduction in waiting time, which is about an order of magnitude bigger than the benefits that I was talking about specifically from the 5G network. So the critical thing here is the reinforcement learning is giving a really big, powerful saving to traffic flow. And then the 5G side of things is enabling that to be more resilient and indeed giving a second order benefit as well. The other key thing, though, to add about using reinforcement learning here is it doesn't need to just be about optimizing for lumps of metal going down the road. We can change the optimization for pedestrians and cyclists as well. So the algorithm is already giving more time to pedestrians, which would be the orange chunk in the pie here, before you even start looking at prioritizing for pedestrians because it can see them. And then if we put it into a pedestrian optimization mode, we then will encourage more pedestrians to cross the road as well. So we can start to use these algorithms to really push the green agenda of encouraging active travel. That comes to the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Peter. We will hear more from you later in the panel, but for now, please stop sharing your video as we are going to share a quick poll with our audience. So we hope you've enjoyed this presentation. If you would like to connect with Vivacity Lab, please cast your vote now. You can select yes, and we'll do our best to connect you after this event. Whilst you're voting, I would like to introduce our next speaker, who is going to talk about industrial 5G core solutions. Please welcome Jeff Land, who is the Head of Sales and Business Development at AtoCore. I'm sure you finished voting, so hello, Jeff. Pleasure to have you today. So the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to introduce AtoCore and where we fit in the 5G ecosystem. My name's Jeff Land. I'm Head of Sales and Business Development at AtoCore. So quick introduction, who we are. So we're a UK SME. We've been in existence since 2014. A very small company, SME, with a distributed team. Everybody works from home, even post-COVID, with a head office in Cambridge. Still majority owned by its founders, which these days is quite unusual. And what we do, basically, AtoCore develops ultra mobile core network software solutions. So that's for both 4G and 5G. And the use of the word ultra there is a bit of a tagline, taking into account ultra low latency of 5G networks, for example. So AtoCore's 5G core is a very, very flexible solution. It can be cloud-based, providing core connectivity solutions completely off premises. It can alternatively be collapsed into a off-the-shelf server appliance. You can have a hybrid of those two scenarios. And these days, there's a completely containerized software version that can be fully distributed across the network in different COT servers and controlled via Kubernetes. It can be supported by very low-end hardware. So what you can see in the picture there is an Intel NUC and an Odroid device, very, very small hardware. And that means the core in an enterprise or an industrial context can be very low cost, very easily deployed on the premises if required. What you get when you buy a solution from us basically is a perpetual license to use the core. You don't have to keep coming back. That license is secured via a license key. And it can be enabled either through use of the key being loaded on something like a YubiKey, or we can associate the key with the MAC address of the underlying hardware that it's running on. So it's very flexible there as well. Basically today, what we're offering, you can see in these, the blue boxes there, is a standalone 5G core, which is up to the minute release 16 capable, providing ultra low latency at the network edge. In addition to that, and as a result of a couple of the 5G Create programs that AtoCore has been involved in, there are some advanced features that are already enabled in the AtoCore 5G core. So things like network slicing or core slicing is enabled already, and 5G positioning and location. At this point, I should reiterate what Peter was talking about. Some of the differences between 4G and 5G are around the utilization of the spectrum, for example. So the G node B on in the green boxes here in 5G is able to utilize typically up to about 100 megahertz of spectrum. That's 4 times as much as the equivalent, simple 4G radio, for example. That gives you very high data throughput capability, and that combined with ultra low latency enables you to deliver new and innovative services, particularly for industrial and robotics type applications. So quick look at some of the case studies that we've been involved in. But first, an overview of the typical cases that can be supported in private mobile scenarios. So things like smart factories, smart city and municipalities, transportation and logistics, smart agriculture, for example. And if the network's out there in the countryside, then just simple connectivity to rural communities is also, of course, a possibility. Things like special events, so point of sales, terminals, and security, for example. Remote utilities and asset tracking is an interesting one, supporting IoT connectivity. And then things like security and fire systems connectivity as well. So some of these we've been able to capture and get involved in some of the specific projects that AtoCore has been involved in as part of the DCMS funded 5G Create programs. So the first one is 5G AMC squared in collaboration with BAM Construction. So this was partly funded by DCMS, two locations, one in Scotland near Edinburgh, and one on the Shetland Islands. And basically the idea is to evaluate the impact of 5G connectivity on a range of construction-orientated systems and services. So for this network, we've deployed a 5G standalone core, a radio solution, which is integrated by a company called accelerators. So release 15 basic mobile broadband solution. But for this project, we developed and have released a location and positioning service on the core as well. Second one is 5G logistics, which is based in and around the Bristol area. This is in collaboration with West of England Combined Authority. And basically this is to give connectivity to logistics orientated services, connecting and asset tracking logistics between the Port of Bristol and Gravity, which is the UK's first commercial smart campus, support traffic management systems at a couple of very busy junctions in Bristol. And again, this is a 5G standalone core, utilizing radios from Airspan in the UK's shared access spectrum of N77. So the Smart Junctions Transport for Greater Manchester project, you've just seen a very detailed presentation from Peter, so I won't go into too much detail about this one, only to say that, again, AtoCore has been directly involved in the distributed 5G architecture that's been deployed to support the Smart Junctions 5G. This is the last one. So this is supporting the deployment of a private network in Germany. This one was actually 4G, but just to give an example of an alternative factory deployment. So this one was actually a very well-known auto manufacturer where the requirement was to deliver a network that gave better quality, better security, and better performance than the existing Wi-Fi. So 4G was able to achieve that. Then when you look at the advantages of 5G over 4G, you can see there is definitely a case for this type of deployment. So in summary, what makes us different? AtoCore is focused on 4G and 5G, so we're not distracted by legacy functions in our software and our products. We're market specialists, so we only specialize in private networking type applications. We don't have big MNO customers. We're committed to quality and reliability in the products that we develop. So in a software development context, exercising more than 80% of what we develop is an important aspect of ensuring that quality. Very customer orientated. So from definition of the features that go into the solutions, we are very focused on creating and supporting excellence in that which we deliver. And we're a UK company. Everything that we've developed thus far and everything that we develop is all homegrown and all goes into the IPR that is available to anybody who wants to talk to us. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Jeff. It's great to see so many different uses and applications across different projects. So please, if you can stop sharing your screen, time for another little poll. If you would like to connect with AtoCore, you can vote now. And whilst you're voting, I would like to introduce you to our next speaker, who's also been working in 5G logistics. Nicolas Dirbergleis is the CEO and founder of Amand Life, and he's going to present how AI, 5G, and autonomous robotics can work together to make smart logistics a reality. Please come to the stage, Nicolas.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Nicolas Zielberglad. I'm CEO of Amand Life. At Amand Life, we believe that the future really is autonomous, and really to unlock all this full potential of autonomy, you need to be able to orchestrate different types of autonomous robotics. And these are the core, what we think will make smart logistics a reality. It's AI, it's 5G, and autonomy. And our vision as a company is really to become the go-to software platform that is enabling the seamless orchestration of autonomous robotics. We will see exactly what does it mean concretely, but let's take one step back. We see that the market is evolving very rapidly. There is a market hungry for our technology. You see more and more adoption of autonomous robotic solutions happening. This is accelerating. Now, there are sectors that are more in need of autonomy. You see this in Industry 4.0. We saw that in the previous presentations. Smart cities, we saw that also in the previous presentations. Now, this makes a rapidly expanding market for all of us in this webinar and for the economy in general. Now, the challenge that we are solving as a company is that you have today millions of autonomous robots, autonomous drones that are being deployed and that will be deployed in the coming years. So the more you have this huge number of robots being deployed, you have the fragmentation of robotics. You have multiple operating systems that are vertically integrated. So if you are a very large car manufacturer, as my previous colleagues previous colleague was speaking, and you have 10 different type of robots working at the same time, you have this fragmentation, so you have inefficiencies. So that prevents what we call a common approach on which scalable, repeatable solutions can be built on. This is what we have created as a company, is a platform that provides autonomy as a service. It's one platform that has multiple cutting-edge capabilities to deploy, manage, and control autonomous fleets of robots. We are like an intelligent central brain, and this is what we do. Now, three key pillars, and I will go fast for this, but I want you to understand this so that we look into the use cases and why 5G is key to all of this, is that we are first a flexible platform, meaning that the same piece of software can be used to deploy use cases in different verticals and sectors. I said flexible platform, but we are also interoperable platform. Interoperability is key to succeed in making smart logistics a reality. And we are capable of controlling different type of hardware, using and leveraging different type of networks, different type of operations, or different type of deployments and hostings. Yeah. So flexible, interoperable. And of course, what you need to succeed in this 5G world is to be open. We are an open platform that integrates to other systems and enhances the capabilities of these other systems. So you would have understood with these type of capabilities, you can deploy different type of autonomous applications that are the key of smart logistics, smart cities, and Industry 4.0. So from, and you are seeing it here, we can go from search and rescue, from intralogistics, hybrid logistics delivery. So this is happening today, and it will accelerate even more tomorrow. Now, I will speak a bit about the 5G logistics. So we saw the previous presentation from DCMS, from our colleagues at AtoCore. So we are very proudly working on this project that is working in the smart ports sector. And let's see a little bit what is our role and why 5G is important to make this happen. Yeah. So there are three key use cases that we are working on in this project. Number one is the free port. Yeah. So ensuring that we provide the traceability and continuous geolocation and monitor of goods and materials. We know that if you have all this amount of data in real time and that you can generate enough, let's say, data sets, you can improve efficiency. You can be able to track and trace much faster and take decisions that are data-driven decisions. So the second use case that we are working on and enabling with this 5G logistics is the port police drones. We all know the concept of safe supply chain. It's one of the key pain points that you see today in ports, the security. And what we are doing is where we're developing and trialing automated and autonomous drone flights for inspections and surveillance rounds in the ports. Yeah, and all these autonomously controlled with our platform, our intelligent central brain. And last but not least, we saw already the concept of smart junctions. This is something that we are also testing here, where 5G is upgrading let's say the smart junction automation setups. Yeah, and this is very important to work on the data flows that go either to the clouds and to other type of platforms. Yeah. So what are we achieving here, and what are we doing? So we are in particular focusing on two topics in the 5G logistics as in life. We are providing the end-to-end surveillance and inspection in the Bristol port, yeah, using fleets of autonomous drones. We are not just a drone company, we are a platform company. So imagine that today we will be able to deploy fleets of autonomous drones, but the same platform can tomorrow integrate robot dogs that will be doing security rounds or connecting to other AI intelligence systems that the port will be deploying. So it's a platform on which you can build interoperability from day one. And the second part that we are doing that is key also for this, let's say, smart supply chain is to work on this RFID nanocell router to locate and track the movement of containers in the port. So we are working here very closely with the Bristol University. So in a nutshell, there are some key benefits that we're working on. So the integration to the 5G network, yeah, it helps to replace manually intensive processes. So the 5G enables that, makes it faster, more reliable, more robust. Second point, very important, the real-time high-quality video streaming. This provides also enough data and quality of data to react very fast and reduce costs in ports. Also, the router that we are building enhances productivity and makes sure that workers are not losing time. And the ultra-low latency event response, this provides around-the-clock surveillance. Now, if we want to take one step back and use that use case to understand why 5G is important, I will take two examples. Imagine you need a large number of devices, of robots, to do a swarm. You need ultra-reliable, low-latency communications. That means time-sensitive applications. You need 5G. Take the example of high-quality imaging that you need to use the AI to recognize immediately if there is a data breach or a breach in the port security. You need enhanced mobile broadband, and for that you need data sensitive applications. You need 5G. Yeah? There are many more examples, but we can discuss that later. So you would understood also to make these smart logistics a reality, you need an ecosystem to flourish. So these projects, this is why they are very important, and the webinars that we're doing today are very important. So from the regulators, the users, the expert platforms, the network providers, UTM sensors. So you would understood, we need to be able to work as an ecosystem to make this flourish. Now, as a company today, we are basing ourselves in a strong partnership model to grow.
Okay, we have lost for a moment. I will introduce you to the next speaker, who will talk us more about how the company can automate road maintenance using the power of connectivity. So I'm really delighted to introduce Lisa Lazo, who is the CEO and co-founder of Robotics 3D, and they are one of the startups who have joined the Spring Accelerator program and are currently experimenting with 5G. So really excited to hear about what to say. Lisa, please feel free to turn your camera on and share your screen. We're looking forward to hear more about your solution.
Thank you very much, Linda.
Thank you.
So let me just share my screen. So good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm fascinated to hear what our fellow innovators are doing. You could probably guess what I'm going to talk about by looking at this title picture. So yeah, I'm going to talk about cracks and potholes on our roads. So before I jump into that, let me give a quick introduction of the company and the background behind the project. So Robotize Limited is a spin-off from the University of Liverpool School of Engineering. Following a 4-year research project, we developed some patented technologies for automated construction, inspection, and repair of large civil infrastructure. We decided to focus on the road maintenance sector as a route to commercialization and bring these technologies to the real world. Specifically, we're developing an automated system for auto detection, prevention, and repair. Our mission is to build a safe and sustainable road infrastructure through intelligent and automated maintenance and repair. So the background of why we take on this challenge is this. It's a subject that needs no introduction. Potholes, very high cost, safety issues, big environmental impact. Despite the fact that nearly 2 million potholes have been repaired every year, the number of potholes is still growing. So it's a spiraling problem, and clearly the traditional methods of dealing with this problem can no longer cope. Step change is long overdue. And this is the reason why we're developing a system called ARRES. ARRES stands for Autonomous Road Repair System. It's a smart device crossing over robotics, AI, and autonomous vehicles. The aims of, for developing such a system are to improve safety, road safety for both the users and maintenance crews, to reduce costs and time to fix, to prevent potholes from developing in the first place, and of course, lowering emissions and responding to labor shortage at the same time. Here's our solution storyline. So at the moment, the current sort of workflow for pothole repair is primarily manual, high cost and unsafe, involving multiple visits to the same spot with long response time, which often leads to the worsening of potholes. With our solution in development, this workflow in the future will be completely automated. So from detection, assessment, to the actual repair, the whole process requires minimum or no human intervention, and as a result can happen on a 24/7 basis. We see this solution being adopted by highways and road asset owners and maintenance contractors, and indeed we're targeting these sectors initially. In the near future, we'll be looking at airports, tunnels, ports as well. And our aim is to obviously replace or at least partially replace those inaccurate and unsafe manual or semi-manual methods currently in use. Our solution can bring a multitude of benefits. On a high level, it can deliver huge economic benefits, and then we're talking about at least 60% cheaper and 90% faster. It can also positively impact on our society and environment as well. It can deliver better working conditions and also the opportunity to upskill our workforce. It can bring less emission and and reduce the microplastics in our ocean, for example, as well. For the maintenance teams, the benefits include safety improvements, better decision making with high quality data, fewer site visits, faster information flow, and also automated planning and scheduling recommendations. So how does it work? So the ARRES system we're building is equipped with smart sensors, data analytics tools, and machine learning algorithms, all integrated onto an autonomous robotics platform with our patented 3D printing technologies. With these features, the system is capable of scanning, identifying and localizing and taking 3D measurements on the go. It can classify the defects into severity levels to help with work scheduling, and at the same time, it can predict the evolution of those defects by fusing together weather and traffic data. It can fill cracks to prevent further potholes from developing, and of course, it can repair potholes and record those repairs as well for warranty purposes. So it's a complex system that we're building. So we are taking a modular approach to achieve all the functionalities in 3 steps. Each step will deliver significant safety, cost reduction, and environmental benefits. So the first step is our automated detection system called ARRES EYE, followed by ARRES Prevent, which will have the additional functionality to repair cracks. And finally, the ultimate system that will also be able to repair potholes autonomously. Just a little bit more on ARRES EYE, because this is the system we have actually completed building and also road tested, also tested for 5G connectivity as well. They are small and lightweight, and more importantly, they can be installed onto existing working vehicles, so buses, bin lorries, maintenance vans, etc. This is so that, when these vehicles are going about their daily business, they can also collect valuable data at the same time. As you know, the future of road maintenance is data-driven, so high-quality data is really of ultra importance. It's the first step towards better decision-making, supported by more objective and accurate data. And here's a quick video clip of ARRES EYE scanning the road, detecting the defects and localizing them accurately on the map, and at the same time indicating the severity level of those defects with red, amber, and gray indicators. So this is not simulation, this is the actual video footage. So from that footage, you can probably guess that one of our technical challenges is communication speed. So indeed, this device collects large amount of data per second at driving speed. The data needs to be received by our powerful AI platform, analyzed, and instructions then being given back to the device on the fly. So network latency and bandwidth are really critical to the safe and optimal performance of the device. And this is why we are interested in 5G connectivity, as it can speed up communication between our onboard and offboard platforms. It can enable the device to receive the right instructions and respond in near real time. And of course, it can facilitate the remote management of the device. Luckily, we were accepted into the ARRES Accelerator program in July this year, and became a spraying program Construct-Tech cohort member. And as part of the program, we were given the opportunity to use the 5G test bed in Coventry. And here's our test result. So we're seeing an average delay using 4G of around 20 milliseconds, and only 3 milliseconds using 5G. So a huge 85% reduction in network latency. And here's a video clip of the test in action at the test bed. And you'll see on the left-hand side, the robot is picking up cracks. The flashing light indicates that it has detected a crack. And the light came on much faster than the one on the right with the 4G connectivity. So yeah, we're really pleased with the test results. And of course, we learned a great deal of what needs to be done going forward. I'm really grateful for the opportunity, especially, we're such a young organization, only 1 year old. And on that note, thank you for listening. We welcome you to contact us and join the conversation. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you very much, Lisa. It's really great to see 5G in action. So really big thank you for sharing your presentation today. And now if you can please stop sharing your screen. Time, you're familiar with this, time for a little poll. If you want to connect with Robotics 3D, please do your vote whilst we move on to the next final presentation for this first part of the webinar. And I'm really delighted to introduce you to Tommy Williams, who is the CEO and founder of Blinks, also joining Robotics 3D in the Spring Construction cohort. Tommy is going to talk about how 5G can enhance safety systems in a construction environment. Tommy, please switch on your camera now, and the floor is yours.
Thanks, Linda. Hello, everyone. My name's Tommy Williams, and I'm pleased to be introducing the future of construction connectivity. So just as an introduction, Blinks is a safety system designed to make construction sites smarter and safer. Our closed loop system enables data to be captured from smart tags deployed around the construction environment and to provide insights which allow construction managers to identify and mitigate risk, helping with better assurance on time and cost. Our system is made up of 3 products. We protect construction companies and their employees by restricting access based on role and purpose to areas with a high potential of danger. And we create reliable and easy to deploy network infrastructure that connects people, plant and places without reliance on third parties. We deliver data to positively affect the safety, security, and quality of construction projects, delivering with greater certainty. And we have identified that 5G will accelerate the digitalization of the construction industry. So what are the advantages of connecting up a construction project? 5G technology offers a range of useful applications, such as remote working, drone surveying and surveillance, robotics, computer vision systems, augmented building models, localization and utilization of people, plant and tools. And in general, the industry is in agreement that improved connectivity will transform how efficient and safe construction projects are. But it is currently a bit of a maze, and construction projects are complicated. The environment is constantly changing, making it hard to ensure connectivity across sites. And work typically occurs in hard to reach areas where public networks are commonly unavailable or unreliable. Products adopt different technologies which suit their use case, making it difficult for construction companies to deploy infrastructure to support all use cases. And technology is rapidly evolving, which makes it hard for organizations to invest in a single technology. Another problem is that new use cases are constantly emerging with different technical requirements. So if private networking is favored, but which technology is best? Which can realistically be rolled out across challenging environments? Which has the most readily available devices with the least compatibility issues? And most importantly, for our clients and other partners, which offers the best return on investment? It's complex. Project owners need to choose the best technology which enables digital transformation for their project, and device manufacturers need to select the right technology that fits the available infrastructure, or they need to build their own. So it's really hard to settle on a technology that moves forwards. It's a bit of a matchmaking exercise. So is 5G the right technology for construction? Theoretically speaking, 5G is the right technology. It enables greater flexibility for a wider range of applications, providing faster connections and more throughput for data-intensive systems and better efficiency over longer distances for IoT type technologies. It gives us the added flexibility for private networking for a wide range of different applications. But even now, it's not perfect. At this time, even though there are standards in place, not all 5G modems are compatible with all networks, and potentially as technology evolves, some older 5G products may no longer be supported. Public networks aren't flexible, and its coverage cannot be altered to suit the changing construction environment. And private 5G networks are expensive and require the client to have some in-house skills to define, build, test, and maintain the network. Device manufacturers need to select the right 5G technology now, considering future evolution and protecting their investment. So what are we doing about the problem? So we're simplifying things. Plinks is building on our existing connectivity solution by providing end-to-end 5G connectivity for the construction sector. In 2022, we'll be providing 5G networks that are rugged, flexible, private, secure, and cost-effective. The solution will reduce the technical complexity and uncertainty for construction companies and solution providers alike. So how does it work? So we will supply pre-configured 5G devices, providing plug-and-play connectivity for a range of use cases. These modems are pluggable via USB and Ethernet, providing connectivity for existing IT equipment. Or these devices can be embedded within other devices using a serial connection. Both will be powered by a single common communication language, allowing device manufacturers to focus on what they do best. They will connect to our networks without configuration, and they will be provided with planning and mapping tools, which will allow our clients to optimize performance at the same time as reducing the burden on IT departments for implementation and use. So what have we achieved to date? So far, we've built and tested our own 5G modem at the Spring program, and we're in the process of testing our equipment with Ferrovial and BAM at their sites. And we have conducted speed, reliability, and security testing, comparing the effect of processing data locally and on the internet. And we plan to complete compliance later on this year and have a product ready for market for the modem. And we're in the process of building a 5G network in a box solution, which expands on our proprietary networking capability. We plan to launch this early next year and are looking for partners interested in trials or adoption when it's commercially available. We are now building out future use cases with our startup and SME ecosystem within construction to start field testing as soon as the networks are up and running. So to summarize, in order for 5G to be a success in construction, we believe in active collaboration between solution providers and simplification and standardization in network technology used, and also better promotion of the benefit taken to grow adoption. The more use cases that utilize the same core technology, the better and stronger the business case for connected sites in the future. If you're interested in finding out more about the future of construction connectivity, you can find us at plinks.io. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Tommy. And thank you for sharing your thoughts as well. We do agree that definitely sharing more about benefits is really important. And that's what we are hoping to do with this series of events. If you want to connect with Plinks, please do it now. Tommy will also be back with us later for the panel. And it's time for our panel, where we'll discuss how industry and innovators can work together to accelerate 5G adoption. During this panel, you can post your question in the Q&A section. There has been already some that has been answered. And if time allows, we will try to answer as many as we can at the end of the discussion. Chairing the panel today is Katie Ho, Head of Innovation Practice for Future Networks at Digital Catapult. I'm delighted to welcome my colleague Katie, and she will introduce our amazing panelists. Katie, please put your camera on.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Linda. Good morning, everyone. I'm really delighted to be chairing this panel on how can industry work together with innovators to accelerate 5G adoption. So I'm going to start by welcoming the panelists on stage. So as I say your name, please turn on your camera and join us on the panel. So firstly, we have Adrian, who is the Head of Center of Excellence for Mobility at Ferrovial. Joining Adrian is Colin, who is the Head of Innovation at BAM Nuttall. We also joined by Sam, who is a Senior Innovation Officer at Transport for Greater Manchester. And we also have Peter and Tommy. So Peter and Tommy you've heard from before, as both speakers coming from the innovators perspective. So before we start the panel, I'd just like to ask our industry representatives to give a quick overview about them and their role. So Adrian, starting with you, a quick intro to you.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, so hi, I'm Adrian Talbot. I'm head of the Centre of Excellence for Mobility at Ferrovial Group. We are a global construction and mobility infrastructure company, and my role in the company is predominantly working with strategic and disruptive innovation focused on mobility and digital infrastructure, which obviously includes 5G. And our role is to drive projects, define and deliver projects related to mobility and digital infra across all of our business units, covering construction, highways, airports, and other mobility services.
Brilliant. Thank you, Adrian. On to Colin.
Hi there. Good morning. So I'm Colin Everson, Head of Innovation at BAM Nuttall. We're a civil engineering contractor based in the UK, part of the Royal BAM Group. My role within Nuttall is Head of Innovation, where we have a portfolio of innovation projects to help our colleagues and our projects deliver better projects with better outcomes, quicker, safer, cheaper. That's the intention. I'm a chartered civil engineer by profession, so it's definitely been quite a steep learning curve, shall we say, in the terms of the realms of 5G and all the interested aspects that it has to offer.
Thank you, Colin. I'm sure we'll go deeper into some of those later in the panel. Sam.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here. I'm Sam Lee. I'm the Senior Innovation Officer at Transport for Greater Manchester. The role of the innovation team is to operate as the pathfinder to the organisation to really look at what future opportunities in new mobility and kind of approaches we take in terms of transport and applying those in the Greater Manchester ecosystem for us to become a smarter customer. So 5G is one of those interesting strands and opportunities, and we're keen to explore what role we have to play within that ecosystem. So excited to be here.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sam. And the audience will know Tommy and Peter again from the earlier speaking slots. So as Linda mentioned, the objective of this panel is really for us to understand, what are the different best practices or ways of collaboration between businesses of different sizes. What are the benefits you see for you? What are some of the challenges and learnings that you might have in some of the programs that you've participated in? So I'm going to start with the industry perspective. So you would have heard, again, from Tommy and Peter around some of the challenges and opportunities that they see in adopting new technology like 5G and their experience going through some of the trials. And what is the point of view from your perspective, from a challenge owner or industry perspective? Again, starting with Adrian.
The main challenges from an industry's perspective are, as always, the maturity of the technology and also the ability to engage with SMEs in a way that they are, shall we say, used to. As a large corporate, we have many processes to follow, and many of these projects are being, certainly from our perspective, and I think Colin is in the same position. It's one thing doing things in a test bed in a lab scenario. It's an entirely different thing doing projects on a live construction site with all of the processes and health and safety assessment and risk assessments that need to be done. So there are some, logistic complications. But I think linked to that, I think also is we have the lack of maturity and certain logistic issues at the moment in the 5G technology space. We've heard it throughout today about the challenges of different modems and things connecting to different networks. And I think if you link that then to the logistics issues for getting on site, we have lots of things, and we've seen a lot of delays in our projects when one time slips, and therefore we have to replan many other replan things, and it's frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. And from your perspective, Colin, any similarities there?
Yeah, there's a bit of a wry smile there. I think it is. I guess it's a lot of ups and downs. I think one of the current challenges is a bit of self-reflection on how we try and do business with some of these startups and SMEs. Today we're even this morning we're still doing battle with our procurement department, and we don't really make it very easy for new businesses to get into transactional relationships with ourselves. I guess we've got a big ecosystem of, if you like, traditional suppliers who supply us with concrete and steel and products that would normally you'll find on one of our construction sites. But when we come up with someone like Plinks, that we've got a technology solution that helps locate assets on a construction site, well we've got to start explaining to people what it even is before we even manage to get relationships off the ground. So I guess a bit of resilience, a bit of patience, and I guess maybe how do we make it easier for ourselves? Because from the outside, it must be very challenging of having to break into these businesses. So I think that's one area that we could certainly work on to make it easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Sam, from your point of view?
Yeah, so I mean, the 5G ecosystem has a range of challenges. I think the core one we keep seeing is around that proving the use case and the business case for it to stack up, and how that links into wider business processes, as kind of Adrian and Colin kind of touched on. But I think the DCMS 5G testbed program has started to help with that, to prove the use cases in a live environment and working out what the gaps in terms of those processes are. I think the other aspect of it links to kind of that connectivity piece and what that looks like. How do we roll this out and how we make it as business as usual once we've proven there is an appetite and the opportunity to with the solution that we're deploying. So it is a constant kind of development, not just on the use case side, but a wider holistic systems of activities. I think that's just sort of a quick question asking around what are the other sectors that links into this. I think cybersecurity is one of those other sectors that we're starting to look at, and what impacts we need to consider these smart cities / connected places solution have on the whole on implementing the solution and operating it in real time.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess turning the question, I guess on its head a bit, because we talked about some of the challenges at the moment within the ecosystem, but also looking opportunities, right? Opportunities to get, access to new innovation, thinking about how you can prove out some of these use cases with SMEs that are really working at the space, maybe taking innovation from adjacent sectors as well. So going to the question of, I suppose, how you're currently working and collaborating with SMEs and startups, would you please share, I guess, some of your experiences so far? I know, some of you are on programs that are directly working with innovators through some of the challenges. So it'd be great for you to share, how you have tried to foster that collaboration in those areas. Again, starting from Adrian, if you don't mind.
So we've obviously been involved with the WARE 5-pring accelerator, and through that we've had engagements with, for example, Plinks, and I'd be more interested to hear Tommy's feedback from engaging with us over the last couple of weeks, and knowing that they did a site, I think they tried to get on site earlier this week, or even perhaps last week. So I'd be really interested to hear Tommy's view on that. But I mean, in terms of what we are doing is we have the Silvertown network up and running on a live site. The good news is that the site that we currently have operational is more of a design office rather than a construction site. So in theory, access is a little easier to manage and maintain. But as soon as we start looking at more advanced use cases that are like advanced robotics or site surveys using 5G, we will need to have the network up and running and access to the full construction site, which is planned and we hope to have in place by the end of the year or very early next year. So we are managing that engagement with the ecosystem ourselves. We are trying to put in place some internal controls and processes, working with the project itself and with various corporate functions. We've had a long history of working with procurement, so I think some of the challenges that Colin was related to, I think we've been through previously. Not to say that our procurement is easy, but at least we can manage that process perhaps a little easier, having done it for some time. But in addition to that, working with some of the accelerator programs to at least manage and handle some of the front end engagement with the startups is, I think, a really proactive and pragmatic way to deal with some of the challenges that we have. So looking for other accelerators that we can work with, or programs that we can work with that can do similar things. And yeah, that's pretty much it, really.
Brilliant, thank you, Adrian. And Colin, I know you've just started your journey on kind of working with some of the innovators. Any first experiences that you can share with the group?
Yeah, well, maybe sort of after talking about all the hurdles and barriers to engage, it's maybe just worth reflecting on some of the previous projects that we've delivered through Innovate UK. So, we've had established some really good, deep relationships with some startups. And I think once that, you get into that relationship and get people access to some of our projects, that's where the real power comes, because within the construction industry there's a whole population there that of people that are willing to try something that's a bit different and a bit new. Once you've identified those sort of early adopters who are willing to listen and engage, then that sort of feedback will just flow really quickly, which just accelerates the technical solutions that we've seen that's been offered. So it's not always a mature solution that we start off with, and we recognize that there is a place for some trialing and some proof of concepts. But once we get the SMEs engaged on our construction projects, we can see some very quick development happen, which will benefit the whole industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go to the startup perspective before coming back to you, Sam, on kind of maybe the wider ecosystem view, because I know you work with different partners as well through your projects. So I guess going to Tommy first, Adrian obviously mentioned the collaboration on the Spring program. I guess from your perspective, what are some of the key principles to enhance collaboration between different businesses?
Yeah, I think I'd probably agree with Colin on the ease of collaboration. From a startup perspective, it's not easy to sometimes even complete the paperwork, let alone have everything readily available to hand. So that consumes a lot of time. Sometimes, the information we would consider isn't even relevant to us. We aren't pouring tons of concrete. We are deploying a technical solution, and therefore, the way in which that is adapted should be best suited. So that, and then, when we are deploying things like network infrastructure, explaining to people, to the organization at different levels. So first of all, to a main management level, then down to site management, then down to users, people that have to interact with this stuff, what exactly we are doing. So that's a communication thing. And from an innovation level, it's setting realistic expectations, so everyone understands, what are we trying to achieve. If it doesn't work first time, okay, fine, how are we going to solve the problem and move forward with it, rather than just saying, this is a technology that's going to do everything. And if it's leading edge, expecting it to do it first time. So yeah, I suppose those are my points.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, what's the value at each step? Even if things don't work out the first time, you're still learning something about the process.
Exactly. Yeah, fail fast and then get it right next time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then from your perspective, Peter?
Yeah, I think one of the sort of key advantages of working with a startup is the motivation to succeed is really there. If something doesn't quite work first time, the motivation to sort of go beyond what was originally scoped to solve the problem. Well, if we don't solve it, we don't exist. So it's sort of breaking down those barriers and removing the blockers to innovation. You're very, very highly motivated on the SME side of things. And that attitude can be infectious. So from the perspective of the larger company that we might be working with, I think working with a company like ourselves, you sort of get that attitude to this is the way we've always done it is not an acceptable answer, and there's got to be a justification and a reason, otherwise it should change. So that's sort of, from a cultural perspective, one of the sort of key advantages. I think while the procurement challenges are always frustrating the first time through, my advice to any other SMEs in the audience is persevere, because the second time you try and contract using an NEC3 is a heck of a lot easier than the first time. So there are actually benefits of going through a lot of that pain the first time, because there are a lot of standard contracting processes that the industry use, and you get used to them eventually and it gets easier.
Totally agree with everything Peter said.
Yeah, good advice. And Sam, from your perspective, kind of working across, kind of the SME industry, public-private sector, and what's your experience with collaboration?
It could be a really lengthy session in itself in terms of how we collaborate. I think the core opportunity for public sector is the fact that the tradition isn't a culture of failing, whereas SME pushes that envelope in terms of failing fast and iterating and trying new things. And for that to be working with big players, it tends to be a bit more difficult, because they tend to be working more established solution. So actually working with SME has actually made us a smarter customer, in terms of future procurement and kind of specification. On the other side, there is slightly shift in terms of that culture aspect of it, where traditionally, I think as a public sector, is very much around a transactional activity when we talk about innovation, whereas now is looking at more around a partnership approach, how we develop something and then build on it and iterate on the solution, because the world is evolving so quickly now. We can't be procuring something that are for 10 years, and actually 5 years is a long time, in the current timeline of technology innovation. So I think that's one aspect of it in terms of opening our minds up a little bit more in terms of what the art of the possible is, and working with SMEs on that. I think on the other side, there is a unique aspect for the UK for us to support SME in terms of showcasing and scaling up their solution. I know a lot of SME have great ideas, but sometimes they hit that barrier where they don't have a living lab location or something live to showcase and demonstrate their solution, so that they can be used to help and scale into other authorities and other kind of organization in the UK and nationally. So that's kind of the approach we're taking as TFGM Innovation to explore, what that would look like and how we can help SMEs to tailor their solution and be that critical friend and customer along the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we talked a little bit around, I guess, traditionally in technology innovation, what are some of the barriers for SMEs to work together with industry? But back to Adrian's point about 5G as an ecosystem, there are some particular barriers as well due to the maturity of the ecosystem. So I guess going back to Tommy first, going back to the startup perspective, a lot of SMEs probably consider 5G to be a bit further, on their roadmap. It might not be an immediate priority, and there might be some obstacles to stand in their way and to actually start experimenting with 5G. So how do we, I suppose, make the case for, why is now a good time to start looking at 5G and what the potential that can bring for new products and services for SMEs?
Yeah, so I think first best to cover off the sort of challenges. So the complexity and uncertainty of existing solutions definitely makes it risky for smaller businesses to consider committing time and resource and actually just investing in the development of those systems. But there is a massive benefit if we can pull together the use cases, because for me 5G isn't just about one use case working and demonstrating an ROI. It's about pulling together lots of different use cases, and in order to do that there needs to be some level of standardization. So once that has been achieved, then demonstrating that and saying to the wider industry, look, this has actually helped us do this, solve this problem. So in construction, it might be 10 or 15 different applications that I mentioned earlier that it could improve, and therefore it's worthwhile investing, and hopefully that should just reduce barriers to adoption of the 5G technology, which is most likely not going to be an SME pushed technology. It's going to be something that's going to come from client side, project owner side, or even the local infrastructure side.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Tommy. And Peter, from your perspective?
I think the position and the maturity of 5G has fundamentally changed from 18 months ago when we sort of embarked on looking at the trials and test bed side of things compared to now. And the journey that we've been on, I think, has put us in good stead for reacting to where it is now. But if I go back to 18 months ago, it was very difficult to make a case for a business of our side to be integrating with 5G, just because it wasn't a thing that was out there. It wasn't a thing that we could sell in a 6-month horizon, and therefore the return on investment was a bit too long. Whereas now it is a thing that we can use. We can see where the ROIs come from. What the trial and test bed has enabled us to do is fund fundamentally some of that earlier research and let us get something market ready ahead of the curve. As an innovator, you're always having to look to the future. You're always having to try and do the thing that is one step ahead. And I think 5G is, say, it's the future. People are already talking about 6G. That's now the thing that is a little bit too far ahead. And I think 5G is really kind of here from a communication perspective. The challenge that I would set is trying to think about what does the system look like in 5 years' time, because if you're always using technologies that are 5-10 years out of date in the design decisions, by the time that piece of infrastructure is being retired, it's 30-40 years out of date, and that is really the biggest risk fundamentally.
Yeah, absolutely. And then going back to, I suppose, the industry perspective as well, so maybe starting from you, Colin, do you think industry is ready for 5G, and what are some of the key groups or of use cases or applications from your perspective that are really key to you?
Well, I'm not sure that it's ready for 5G because I think we're still in the exploration stage of finding out what it might be able to do for us. And I think certainly, programs like the 5G Create program from DCMS and the project that Adrian's running on the Silvertown Tunnel project, it's just about really just exploring what can be done and getting it in front of people. because you've got a very quick, if you like, a decrease in the knowledge and awareness of the topic as you go through the industry. So everyone on this call is talking about working with technology startups and using 5G, but behind us in the industry, you've got a whole population there going, what the hell are you talking about? So I think it's a bit too early to say that it's going to be revolutionary. It's going to bring massive improvements, but I think these are the sort of the early steps that are necessary in just getting some test beds up and running, trying some of these different solutions. And as Peter and Tommy have alluded to, it's not going to work first time, but the idea is to flip it round and learn from the experience and just keep evolving and keep pushing ahead the development. And I think it needs a bit of a sort of a gut feeling as well sometime. I know Sam's talked about, you need the business case, but sometimes you just need to be bold, I guess, and just give this stuff a bit of a try. And let it have some legs and give it some life, and then we can start measuring the benefits once we've got something up and running to look at.
Brilliant, thank you, Colin. Adrian, from your point of view? Oh, I think you're still on mute.
Sorry, on mute. No, like I said, I agree with what Colin said. It's too early to say, although, from what we've seen earlier today, for example, we're starting to see those use cases come through where, the value of 5G is coming, and it's great to see that it's not just about, increased bandwidth, but about reliability, about security, about latency. And I think making sure that we recognize all of those, benefits from the beginning, I think is very clear. And historically I've been banging on in various, fora about one of the benefits of 5G is that it's a ubiquitous technology that can be used for everything. So it's not limited to one specific use case. There are many, many use cases that it supports, and we should be looking at 5G from the context of as a replacement technology for a number of existing comms technologies. Obviously, that doesn't mean to say that it will be better at any one in particular use case than some of the other technologies that already exist. But when you start looking at the financials and the both from a CapEx and OpEx perspective, the benefits of having one technology that rules them all when it comes to comms will I think have a more significant impact than you might initially think in terms of how it gets adopted over time. So there is a case of even focusing on those use cases where many people say, well, what's the benefit of 5G? Well, actually proving that it either is as good or maybe even slightly better than what it can be done on, NB-IoT, LoRaWAN, or whatever, is just as valuable as proving those use cases where, 5G is an absolute necessity. So I think, sometimes simple is good enough, and I think that ubiquitous technology and replacement technology angle is very important to the overall wider adoption.
Great, thank you, Adrian. And Sam, from your perspective?
Yeah, so I would disagree slightly with Adrian and Colin in terms of where we're up to in the timeline. I would agree with 18 months ago, before the COVID pandemic, but the pandemic has accelerated that transition in terms of remote working, remote education, and how all that plays out, and digital connectivity at the core of all of this as a whole. And I think we need to look at it, as Adrian said, in that holistic view, that to the end user, the connectivity, what badges is irrelevant. When we start expanding out, you could be talking about satellite communication like Starlink and OneWeb and how all that plays a bigger part. But I think the important piece from a transport perspective is we're starting to look at digital connectivity as a way of reducing the carbon emissions and tackling our climate emergency agenda, bringing very much back on theme on COP26. We kind of feel that actually 5G is critical to reducing the costs of achieving some of those targets, and actually it's no longer about people going from A to B, and actually it's about services going from B to A, and people not necessarily required to travel to tackle some of those kind of key climate emergencies. And I think the last piece to touch on is around kind of digital connectivity poverty. I think 5G has a real opportunity to increase the inclusivity and accessibility of digital provisions for all spectrum of people in the city and the city region as a whole. And that aligns with a lot of the digitization we're seeing in terms of government processes and local authority service provision. So I think we're in this unique critical point that we'll see a huge acceleration of some of the applications and solutions in the next 6 months to a year. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it unfolds from there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sam. Actually, your point links perfectly to one of the audience questions that I was going to point out around sustainability. So Adam from the audience had a question around challenges in securing energy for a growing number of devices and sensors to operate platforms and new applications. I suppose, do you have any thoughts on that topic and how this could be mitigated, but also wider examples of using technology to reduce energy consumption as well?
Yeah, so we're sorry, I'll just quickly jump in. And we're quite at an early stage of this. As you can imagine, the organizations are traditionally very much about physical infrastructure as a whole, but actually with all this connected place infrastructure, we're getting to a point where actually all the utilities link up. So it's not just about physical connectivity, it's around power provision and digital connectivity as well. On the power side of things, we are looking at how that links into our electric vehicle charging infrastructure as part of the agenda, but we're also exploring what does the roadside cabinet needs to look like in the future as part of the 5G Create project. Do we need to ensure a certain amount of power is there? Do we ensure that certain physical security is there, depending on what equipment we put in? Should we be starting to decentralize some of our cloud-based offerings so that we're doing more on the edge, to reduce the latency even further? So there's a lot of questions that links into the wider part, but we're still in the early stage of trying to learn and understand what works and what doesn't work.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sam. And any response from other panelists on that point around energy consumption? Peter?
Yeah. If I could jump in, I think that from the Smart Junctions 5G side, there were sort of two things to say on that. And the first one is that the use case in terms of improving traffic flow has a much bigger impact on fuel consumption than the consumption of the sensors. So the sort of 10, 12 watts that the sensors are consuming is negligible compared to the power that it would take to stop a car from 30 miles an hour down to 0 and then re-accelerate it back up to 30 miles an hour again. So every vehicle that doesn't have to go through that cycle, you've made a massive energy saving. However, on that 10, 12 watts side, I think it's a really good example of how having an internet connected device is actually beneficial in terms of the long-term R&D piece, because as our software gets more efficient from an algorithmic perspective, we can push updates to the devices that then mean they can run at a lower power in the future. So we've recently pushed a software update on one of our core machine learning algorithms that has effectively, you can look at it in two different ways. You can either say that the frame rate has doubled with that software update, or we can run at the old frame rate and half the power consumption of the sensor. So actually having the connectivity there enables these benefits that are coming from the research and the software side to be deployed more easily. Whereas if you're not deploying connected devices, the device is going to be as inefficient as it was on day one for its entire life.
Brilliant. Thank you, Peter. Adrian, you've unmuted.
I just wanted to reinforce what Peter was saying in terms of, we as an infrastructure player, we also, have to look at various things when it comes to, and I'll say sustainability in the wider sense, not just energy consumption, because it's CO2 emissions. And as Peter was saying, the digital element compared to what we're hopefully optimizing, e.g. traffic or infrastructure capacity, is maybe not negligible in our case, but certainly considerably, a minor aspect compared to, not pouring a couple of million tons of concrete, for example, to increase capacity, or, making sure that we're eliminating the lack of fluidity in traffic, for example. So We're looking at all of those things in terms of opportunity costs, and it's really, or opportunity impacts, should I say. So if we didn't do this, what would we be doing instead? But that being said, we are still looking at minimizing the, the energy consumption and the overall end-to-end life cycle impact of any new technologies that we're putting in, including obviously looking at different ways of powering the devices. If we are deploying things at the edge, then we can make them, we can cool them appropriately, we can heat them if necessary in different ways. We can find different ways of minimizing the overall impact, not just during installation, but also during operation as well. So we are looking at all of those things.
Yeah, Tommy.
Yeah, just to sort of add to that as well, is if we're building networks, private networks, these are specifically for construction environments. Not only is the benefit from actually not doing certain things or optimizing movement of machinery or people or whatever, but also building networks that are fit for purpose, that are designed to provide coverage for the site specifically, rather than just using loads of power because we're deploying a network in this area, or needing some sort of public infrastructure to be rerouted as a result of. So I think just making sure that thought process of what's the impact going to be is being made in the decision making process.
Brilliant, thank you. And Colin, from your side?
Yeah, I think it's important that that sort of, I guess, the SMEs consider about how the technology is going to be powered. When you think about the Plink solution, that, I guess, it's probably an early conversation where, you just provide a socket and the contractor has to sort out the power. But what they've done is they've thought about, well, if it's going to be in a fairly remote location, providing power to it is not going to be the easiest thing to do. So let's just come up with a renewable power solution. It's independent. It makes it easier to deploy. And then it just avoids, that, I guess what we would have done traditionally was just put a generator next to it and plug it in. It will be an oversized generator, but burning fossil fuels, because, traditionally that's been the easiest solution to go to. So I think, yeah, it just might need some thought sometimes, just to sort of have an all-rounded approach to how the power is provided. That they're not always within ready reach of the national grid.
Okay, great. Thank you, panels. So we've got some interest in the audience around smart city use cases in particular in the UK, and the application of 5G in some of these initiatives. Also weaving in, if there are any use cases surrounding sustainability emerging in this space as well. So I suppose I'm going to go to Peter first for this one, to see if you've got any other use cases you want to highlight in the smart cities space.
So I think, obviously, at Vivacity, we're very much focused on the transportation side of things, and we saw in the presentations earlier one use case looking at infrastructure maintenance on the pothole side, ourselves looking at the actual traffic flow piece. So both of those are full examples of some degree of smart city sort of being delivered in reality. The sustainability piece on all of this, from that perspective, is coming from the making things more efficient. I think the other side of the equation to remember was Sam was saying earlier, in the post-COVID-19 world where movement behaviours are changing, the connectivity is then also enabling a reduction potentially in total transport. So if more work is being done from home, like I am today, I haven't had to travel into the office, and that, from a sustainability perspective, has driven things forward. So you kind of got a collection of different benefits that are coming in from the different bits of technology, whether that's efficiency of transport flow, whether it's using the connectivity for some other use case around power networks, water networks, or whether it is changing population behaviour.
Brilliant, thank you, Peter. And Sam, coming to you next on your thoughts.
I mean, there's so many different use cases out there. I mean, all of them would be trying to prove that they are sustainable at the moment. I think the only one I would add, kind of on top of what Peter said around traffic management and kind of flow management, is actually around active travel. So how do we encourage people to cycle more, and micromobilities, e-scooters are now quite a big proposition. How do we link those in as part of this connected vehicle and connected infrastructure play as well? So one of the kind of sustainable use case we're exploring is what the role of 5G in terms of providing real-time information for these more vulnerable road users, and how do we make that safer as a whole for them? How do we use that insight and how they move around to design future infrastructure? So there is definitely more applications coming. I think we're at that kind of early stage of exploring what's coming next. Well, now we're post-COVID with this new behaviors emerging. So a lot of it is going to be around how we collect behavior data as the kind of evolves, as the city evolves.
Brilliant, thank you, Sam. And really important point to consider different types of users as well in an environment. So I think we've only got time for one more question from the audience, which is a bit more construction focused. So I'm going to go to mainly Colin and Adrian for that one first, but the rest of the panelists, please do jump in with any thoughts. So the question is, how can environment for use of cutting edge technology be improved across construction? The comment is the benefit to contractors must be weighed against the risk, for example, of delay to them. But there are further benefits to the economy and society, which support decreasing the downside in the post-testbed stage. So Adrian, coming to you first for any thoughts on that question.
I'm not sure I fully understood the question, if I'm honest. So how do we make the environment more accessible?
So I think is the use of technology across construction. So I guess my interpretation of this will be not just, like you say, in the innovation stage, but the operation space of new technology in construction.
Okay, so if we look at there are really two angles to this. I mean, our focus has been on private networks, of course, but we've seen, for example, from VIVACITY that you can use public networks as well. So there are different types of construction sites depending on where they're located and what the options are. But I think we've touched on all of the various points today in that, there are things that the large contractors like Ferrovial and BAM need to do in order to, adopt these technologies internally. And what's going to drive that is, value. And like I've said, there are value can be captured in many different ways. Minimizing the number of communication technologies that you need on site is one. Being able to, have low power solutions that can be deployed remotely is another. Being able to facilitate the different types of use cases, high bandwidth, low latency, etc., is a third. But ultimately, it will come down to one thing, and that is if that value can be recognized and ultimately, be translated either. Translated to the bottom line, either in terms of operational efficiencies or future pipeline wins due to an overall technical score, then clearly it's going to be beneficial to the business. So on the one hand, from a large contractor perspective, value will always be king one way or the other.
Thank you, Adrian. And Tommy, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I think there's a requirement for construction companies to, in order to drive adoption, there's a requirement for them to have some infrastructure in place. Otherwise, it's up to the organisation that's offering the solution to actually consider everything themselves. For example, is the power in the location, as Colin said, is the power to charge the devices overnight, or do the generators turn off at night and therefore you can't recharge? Something that we've had to do is come up with a power solution that deals with that. But not every company is going to, it's not necessarily the best solution for every company to come up with their own solution to each of these problems, when there could be a construction site of the future which considers that certain things are going to need to charge at night. There's going to need to be a certain level of connectivity across sites, and that should be standardized so that solution providers can provide something that just fits with what their expectation with what the site is available. And also that needs to sort of further part of that question is to say, well, how can that happen beyond test beds? because whilst Ferrovial and BAM are huge construction companies that are forward thinking, there are other end of the spectrum companies that unless they see the value staring them in the face and they've got a number at the bottom of the page that says this will be the saving, they're not going to do it. And so as an industry, that's what we need.
Thank you very much, Tommy. And I don't know if Colin, you've got anything to add to that last question from the BAM at all.
Yeah, I mean, sort of the environment that we're trying a lot of these technologies in, we've already got a contract in place with our client, and there's a program, there's a scope of works and a budget. So what we're trying to do is to find, if you like, a safe place to try some of these things out. And quite often, you know, we'll have a traditional solution to a problem. And then what we're doing is to sort of run, if you like, the high technology 5G enabled solution in parallel to get a bit of confidence. But at the moment, what you don't want to do is to scrap the old way of doing it, try something new, because if it does fail, then you'll just lose confidence all round. So there's a little bit of parallel running involved just to build up a bit of confidence. And then we can then go, I'll tell you what, should we just get rid of the old solution because everyone is now comfortable with what the new technology can provide.
Thank you, Colin. And we have actually just run out of time for this panel. So I want to thank you all. Thank you to all the panelists for sharing with us your experience and insight. I hope that was really useful for the audience. Obviously, all the best of luck with your projects and your collaboration moving forward. And we look forward to hearing more about how they progress. So with that in mind, again, thank you to the panelists. And I'm going to hand it back to Linda for the next session.
Thank you very much, Katie, and thanks again to all the panelists for such an interesting discussion. It's a shame we don't have time to go through the remaining questions. However, we will try to direct them to the panel and answer them offline. So we're coming to almost the end of this event. And before we conclude, we actually have some exciting news on Horizon Europe and 5G funding opportunities. Sharing those updates are our next speakers. We go today Craig Sharp, who is Program Manager Aerospace and Horizon Europe National Contact Point at Innovate UK. And following his presentation, we're also going to invite Viola Hay, who is the Knowledge Transfer Manager European Programs at KTN. So please, Craig, who's going to be first, join our virtual stage and you can start sharing your screen.
Okay. Okay, Craig Sharp, National Contact Point, Horizon Europe, particularly in the digital area. In practice, what we're going to be talking about today in terms of opportunities, some will be in the digital area, quite a lot of them won't. Those of you who've been in European programs before will be familiar with this kind of scenario. Viola will have the pleasure of speaking a little bit later, talk a little bit more about the kind of support that's available to you. So that's interesting. Okay, quick overview of Horizon Europe. Some of you may have been involved in its predecessor, Horizon 2020. That was another 7-year program. Horizon, that's just finished. We're now into Horizon Europe. First calls just now. Broadly split into 3 pillars, as they call it. Pillar 1 tends to be TRL 1 to 3, so that's more universities and research organizations. Pillar 2 is where the focus of interest is likely to be for you. They're called clusters nowadays. They've been called various things in the past, but the gist of it is these are separate areas that have their own funding effectively reserved for that area. The published work programs are typically 2 years long. We've got the current 2-year one out at the moment, so we have them for health and security and digital industry and space and so on and so forth. The budget overall within that area are reasonably sizable. Within those, there'll be topics that you can actually get into, and I'll put up a few of those shortly to give you a flavour of them. Total budget for Horizon at the moment is 95.5 billion. That does not include money that would be coming in from the likes of UK and other associate countries such as Turkey and Israel. So the end total for Horizon Europe is going to be substantially higher. It's collaborative R&D that we're looking at here. Basic eligibility stuff. You need at least 3 separate organizations. It can be a combination of companies, universities, research organizations. Usually there's going to be companies in there anyway. That's an absolute minimum. From the UK, you quite often find it's fairly evenly split actually between them and universities working together, but you can go into that detail later. As long as they're all in separate EU member states or associated countries, such as when things are sorted out, UK or Israel or Turkey, at least one member state in the mix. Most projects collaborative typically have 4, sometimes 5 countries in there, so easily meet that requirement. And the expectation is the UK will become an associated country in it. There's official guidance on commission sites. It says they're fully eligible to apply and the evaluators not to treat us as normal and so on and so forth. Award criteria, 3 areas, basically scientific excellence. The impact is the exploitation, quite often with higher TRL topics. That's particularly important. And the quality and efficiency is basically how you'll manage it and run it. Projects are typically going to be 2 to 4 years long. Budgets will vary, but smaller ones are in the 2 to 4 million euro bracket. Larger stuff, you're up to the 6, 8, 10, 12. I think there's a couple, 13 million that I'm looking at here. So the scale can be a little bit higher. The bit about the actions is just quick to give you an idea on funding rates. If it's a research and innovation action, they're typically TRL 3 to 5, but they usually say the innovation action is a little bit higher, so typically TRL 5 to 7-ish. And the 70% funding rate there is to companies involved. Research organizations still get their 100% of direct costs. There's a flat rate 25% applied as well. Okay, why do it? Why not just stick with domestic? Look on it as an option or an extra or something that can take you in a different direction or do things that you won't get with domestic. Your reasons for doing it will vary, potentially. So if you're looking to go into markets outside of domestic UK, it's a very good way of getting close to potential key customers or potential suppliers, working things that perhaps aren't funded to the same extent domestically. Perhaps the scale of the projects are going to be bigger. Perhaps you can access people and knowledge and facilities that you won't find so much in domestic programs. So it's not a case of you do one or you do the other. A lot of organizations who work in domestic funding programs quite often work from time to time when it works for them in European programs as well over the years. And I've happily done that. It really just depends how you want to develop it. If you're new to it, there are support services available. We can take you through it so you understand all the ups and downs and how much time and what the benefits are. So you can make a reasoned value judgment for it. Opportunities themselves, going into them. In the previous 7-year program, Horizon 2020, you could find topics in the likes of transport and health and so on. There was a specific area around about 5G. PPP is just a public-private partnership. It was an industry-led roadmap that worked out what it was doing. Now we're into Horizon Europe. 2 main areas. You'll find opportunities across cluster work programs, in other words, the small screen grab even on the right. So within mobility, it used to be called transport, probably quite a few in there. I'll put some up shortly. There's possible topics in health and applications, climate and security, as well as the enabling areas of digital industry and space, where you develop some of the technology. There's something coming up. Previous program, it was called 5G calls. This time round, it's smart networks and systems. It's not in the main work program. It's a separate partnership. I won't bore you with the details, but we expect it to be published around about mid-December. And naturally looking at 5 and 6G topics. It's quite an increase in funding. So there's about 900 million that it'll have in terms of funding, probably running over 7 years as well. If you want more details on that, please keep in touch with us and we can keep you posted on how it's developing. The topics I'm going to put up are not, you must do this and these are the only ones. This is just a kind of snapshot to give you a feel for some of the things about. So if you specifically look for mention of 5G, these topics will be in amongst the ones that will come up. They might be relevant to what you're thinking about, they might not. The first job with all of these things is to have a look and figure out what really fits. And we'd always recommend you spend a bit of time working that out. Success rates in these things vary, but if you assume somewhere around about 20% mark, maybe a bit less, and you've got to put a consortium together or join a consortium. So there's a lot of value in it, but just pick carefully and make sure it really fits what you want to do. So a couple in health, if you look across to the right, you'll get an idea in the project budget, TRLs if they're stated, and what the deadline for application is. So you get a feel for how much time you could potentially have to prepare. So a couple in health, third one down is on security, monitoring of threats. There's a couple on the digital area. That's looking on beyond 5-6G RAN disaggregated. That's got an April deadline next year. Another one on ultra low energy and secure networks. And the fifth one down is across in energy. Some might fit, some might not. Have a look. Slides will be available afterwards. The hyperlinks will take you straight to them. There was some discussion earlier on round about the transport area. It's the wording's now mobility, but there's a number of calls in this particular area I've just highlighted. Some of them have a January deadline, some of them are actually way out to September next year, and the text telling you about them and the detail about them is already about. So if anything there looks like it might well be of interest, please feel free to get in touch. But it covers quite a lot of things. Can be integrating services, including traffic management, can be linking in with AI applications, it can be logistics. It can just be developing new and shared mobility services, looking very long term. There's just quite a range in there. Okay, these were the application ones. Smart network systems, which, as I say, we think is going to break cover mid-December. Okay, core topics will come up through this. We know there may be some drafts about. If you keep in touch with us, we can maybe give you an idea a little bit more, possibly. A couple of links there where you'll find some more of the background, some of the key players involved as well. And there are a few slides there kicking about as well that can give you an idea on the roadmaps and the kind of things they're thinking about. As far as I know, this one's going to split into 3 phases probably. So the first 2 years will be phase 1. So we should be a little bit more detail about that in a couple of weeks. And finally, from me anyway, quick look at the kind of support that's available. So there's national contact points like myself. I've got equivalents across all the member states in Europe and beyond as well. We can share information. We can help on some aspects of the partner search. If you've got queries about it, you're wondering what's coming up, please get in touch. We're free. We effectively work for government. These discussions are confidential. We're not going to tell anybody else what you're up to. Knowledge transfer, you'll hear from Viola shortly to take that in a little bit more detail. They've got particular specialists around about this area as well. And there's also what's now called Innovate UK Edge. Some of you may remember it as Enterprise Europe Network. And the URL in the bottom left is simply one to the main site of the organisation I work for, which is UK Research and Innovation, all the research councils together. That'll give you some background and some links providing contact details of all the national contact points and others. So, Viola.
That's great. Thank you very much, Craig. And I just got a note to be really, really quick. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Viola Hay, European Programs Manager at KTN. To just give you a very quick introduction to KTN. Craig, if you could go to the next slide. So at KTN, we are all about connecting for positive change. So we exist to connect innovators with new partners, help them to access new funding, help them to access new markets, and basically explore new opportunities beyond their existing thinking. So to accelerate their ambitious ideas that they turn into real world solutions. So bring new products, processes, services to market faster. You can see here our priority areas: net zero, diversity and inclusion, global innovation, place, innovation, adoption and diffusion. And we have a team of over 200 experts working across the UK. Next slide, please. And because we are based across the UK, we are in an ideal position to connect what's happening regionally to what's happening nationally and then globally. So, and European programs is part of the Global Alliance program within KTN. And Craig, if you go to the next slide. Thank you. And in our European programs team, we work very closely with the National Contact Point team and Innovate UK Edge to really join up and optimize the support available to UK applicants. So that can range from talking through your proposal idea, giving advice on proposal development, helping to find right partners for your consortium, reviewing your outline proposal, or even the full proposal. It's the only thing we don't do is writing proposals for you, but very happy to give feedback. KTN has links with European Commission, with the European technology platforms like SASCHEM, where we lead the UK Secretariat for the Sustainable Chemistry platform. We also have close links with other partnerships like the Bio-Based Industry Joint Undertaking and SPIRE, which stands for Sustainable Process Industry through Resource and Energy Efficiency. KTN is also participating in projects. We are also participating in projects ourselves where it fits KTN purpose and strategy. So that means we are mainly getting involved in coordination and support actions where it's all about knowledge transfer, building networks, supporting value chains. So next slide, please, Craig, thank you. And just my final couple of slides is to highlight some upcoming events that I hope will be of interest to you. Just a bit of self-promotion here. We have a series of Horizon Europe Consortia building events in partnership with the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office and the Science Innovation Network coming up, and with Innovate UK as well. They are also involved. 4 dates are in the diary: 21st of October, 26th, 29th of October, and the 26th of November. You can see here the different areas we are covering, and registration links on here as well. If you're interested in Horizon Europe funding and to learn more about forthcoming calls, I would also encourage you to keep an eye on the Commission organized info days. I've got a link here. In this info days, Commission officials go through call texts through the work program and explain in detail what the scope is, what the budgets are and eligibility, and you hear everything directly from the Commission there. KTN is also a delivery partner in the UK 5G network, and I just recently started to support the International Working Group. And at the bottom here, I would like to highlight 2 events that the Department for International Trade, Department for International Trade in Spain and in France are organizing. One is on the 4th of November, Impact Beyond 5G Connectivity, and the other is on the 17th of December around private 5G networks. So there's a bit more information here. And links to registration. I put a few links here in the chat now and my email address as well. So if you would like to get the slides, please feel free to email me and or the colleagues at the Catapult. So you get the slides and you have all the links then handy and available to look into in more detail in your own time. So hopefully that hasn't overrun too much. So that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Viola, for speeding up through the slides, and also Craig for sharing these interesting opportunities. As they said, we will share the presentations with you and you can find out more. So it's time to conclude our event, but before we go, I just would like to remind you about our next event on the 16th of November, where we'll be exploring a very exciting 5G use cases and trials in manufacturing logistics. You can find the link in the chat. Don't miss the opportunity to hear from industry experts. We will have National Composite Center, Ford, BAE Systems, Atchison Ports, and many others. So please sign up and share with your colleagues and friends. And as we conclude the event, I would like to say a big thank you to all our amazing speakers, all the insights, and all of you who have listened today and contributed to the discussion. The recording of this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel in the next couple of days, so you can also watch again or share with your colleagues. And again, thank you, and I hope to see you all on the 16th of November. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.